Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
Hello and welcome to this video. It's me again, doing another Generation X jump-in video, I guess you'd call it. Breakdown of Gen X, anecdotes and all that good stuff. I need to start out by thanking all the people who've watched the last Generation X videos that I've done and hit the subscribe button. Thank you very much for doing so. I also want to say a good thank you to all the people on Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram that do the Generation X shorts. They're still doing a really great job, really great work. Enjoy their shorts, which has led to the inspiration for doing these videos. Soda. But now, today I kind of want to talk about something I find rather amusing, is the break. Not really the break, when we were kids growing up, at the beginning of the 10 o'clock news, there was always a reminder to our parents that they had kids, and it went, "It's 10 o'clock, do you know where your kids are?" And that is a pretty interesting thing, because I don't think it made it into the 90s. I remember watching it as a kid, seeing it. One of the things I used to watch all the time growing up was Johnny Carson, or The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. He was the second host of, maybe the third. I think Parr was the first host of late night, or the Tonight Show, excuse me. But it is what it is. That announcement, like I said, was basically a reminder to our parents that they had kids. To go and check their bedrooms to see if they're in. During the summertime growing up, most of the time, at 10 o'clock, my parents had a vague idea of somewhere in Coryell County that I was, but knowing exactly where I was at 10 o'clock during the summer, probably kind of a touch and go type of situation. Now, during the school year, I was almost always in my room. Friend of mine, we'll call him Gary because, well, that's his name. Me and him would be in my room watching TV. Had a little, like, 12-inch black and white television. We watched shows that we enjoyed watching back then were all your after school cartoons, your shows like Max Headroom, Johnny Carson, Moonlighting. And that's all that comes to the top of my head. There's many more we used to watch, but that's neither here nor there. But that whole go figure out if your kids are home or not message by the news, which was something I think was distinctly 80s, to be honest with you. Something that, because of our feral nature and our parents not being, not necessarily the parents were neglectful. It's just, this is a time when both parents entered the workforce. They were busy, they were tired, and they depended on us to be miniature adults so they could go have jobs, bring food, and, pay the bills and stuff. In some cases it was probably neglect, but in my own personal case, I think it was more that they were busy. My mom worked different places, TG&Y, she worked at Walmart, she worked for Texas Department of Corrections, and she worked at several convenience stores like 7-Eleven, Circle K type places. The whole thing with both parents, my father's military, my father was a senior NCO, so he had all of those headaches that he had to deal with, and he had to deal with me and my little sister. And my mom, same thing. She had all the stresses and complications from her job, plus she had me and my little sister to deal with. I've said it in, I think it was the first video, Generation X video I did, that the basic rules that I had growing up were, don't burn the house down, make sure your sister eats, and don't get arrested. Pretty much the rules. And during the school year, the obligatory be home when street lights come on. As I got into high school, that being home by the street when the street lights were on was relaxed a lot, because my friend would come over, Gary would come over, and we'd watch TV in my room till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. A little hack that, or I guess, yeah, hack, to use the modern verbiage. My parents, because they had jobs and responsibilities, were in bed by 10:30, 11 o'clock at the latest. So what me and Gary would do is they'd go to bed, we'd wait about 30, 40 minutes, then we'd go out to the living room, I'd disconnect the cable box from the big TV, take it into my room, run it into my TV, and we would watch HBO or Showtime. And especially on like Thursday night, Friday night, is when they showed all their softcore porn. And us being healthy, heteronormative, cisgendered boys at the time, we were all about it. We were all about watching all that. So, yeah. Then when we got done, when Gary was getting ready to go home, we'd disconnect the cable box, reconnect it to the TV, and to this day, I don't know if my parents ever knew, and if they did know, they didn't say anything about it. They didn't make a point about it. They didn't really make an issue of it if they knew about it. If they didn't, they didn't. They do now. If my mom's watching, my father passed a couple of years ago, but if my mom sees this, she may go, yeah, we knew, or she's like, you did what? But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, the fact that I grew up in a time where your parents had to be reminded they had kids because they were so worn out, beat down, and all that stuff that goes with working. And it was especially interesting when my father, when they'd go to the field or they'd go on maneuvers and stuff like that, because it would be basically my mom, me and my sister for, a week or two on end. And basically I had to come in and do play the role of the man of the house. Set the lens cap down. The man of the house when that happened. Then once he retired, my father got out and did odd jobs, kind of cash under the table type things, helping friends out that had businesses, mechanics and stuff like that, because that's the way his brain was put together. My father could sit and read a Chilton's automotive manual like I can read a science fiction novel. That's just the way his brain was put together. And I have used to have a couple of the Chilton manuals, which I only looked at when I needed to fix something. But it all comes down to I don't think it was a lack of supervision so much as our parents knew they couldn't supervise us because we were in an economy in a world where both parents had to work. So in lieu of supervision, they taught us how not to be stupid. And that whole teaching you how not to be stupid is those of us who made it to adulthood is because we learned that lesson. Does it mean we didn't do stupid things? Yeah, we did. We did lots of stupid things. But we were smart about how we did our stupid things. We made it a point to minimize the negative effects of doing stupid things. It's just what we did. And my father, the house I grew up in, had a shed in the backyard. And me and Gary would spend hours, we'd get up on top of the shed, get a ladder, or crawl up there. I forget exactly how we got up on top of the shed, but we would get on top of the shed and discuss school, politics, life, high schooler stuff. But that was just it. And like I said, the fact that we grew up first generation, both parents working, transforming from an analog world into a digital world was something that too, because in the late 80s, I want to say 85, 86, it may have been as late as 87 that we got our first modem. And it was the War Games modem. You had to plug your phone into it and dial out. And there were a few bulletin boards that weren't long distance phone calls. Matter of fact, there's a couple that were like 800 numbers. Don't know to this day where they were located at, but they were free. And that is where I realized that with the digitation of everything and being in its infancy, that it was going to be wild out there. Things, you know, programs you could download, downloading games that you didn't have to pay for, that was just, I mean, mind you, you had to download a file, then figure out how to get that file to play it where you could record it onto a cassette tape, so you can put the cassette tape in the cassette player for the computer to play the game. And me and Gary ran cables and wires and all kinds of stuff. We figured it out. It was crazy. It looked like something out of a Matthew Broderick movie gone left. But no, we didn't almost blow the world up or anything, but it was, I mean, it was just, the fact that I could download something from wherever and do that. It was, I mean, mind you, it would be, let me see, I had a TSR-80, he had a TI-99. And the fact that we would download stuff to a floppy drive, I think that's how it, because there was no internal hard drives on those, so it had to have been a floppy. And we went from the big record LP sized floppy disk to the 5 1/4 to the 3. Now we got thumb drives. I think the 3.5 double-sided, double density discs were more early 90s. I think I was an adult when those became more prevalent on the market. Then you had the emergence of the internet, and the emergence of, and it all, the Gen X lived through that transformation of the internet being this wild, crazy thing to being this kind of pseudo-safe environment. I mean, yes, you've got Tor browsers and things like that to get on darknet, but that is neither here nor there. And that is still, I have a feeling in time, the darknet is going to be lightened up, just simply because the government feels the need to rule and control and not govern. So I have a feeling that the darknet is going to evolve, and the darknet as we know it today is going to lighten up. I do think the darknet serves a purpose. I don't recommend downloading a Tor browser and hitting onion sites unless you are really prepared to see some things you've only heard about in really bad horror movies. If I can tell you from experience that if it can be bought and sold, it's on the darknet. And we'll leave that there for now. We'll get back. I got to get back to the original point of this. When you grow up in a decade in which your parents have to be reminded they have children because they're exhausted. It's just crazy. Then we get into the 90s. I don't remember any of that from the 90s. I mean, I was a young adult in the 90s. In fact, 1990, I turned 20. So it is weird. Actually, yeah, 1980, end of 1989, I turned 20. So when the 90s rolled around, I was an adult, for lack of a better term. I should say that I was as close to an adult as somebody in Gen X can possibly get. Because we are perpetual adolescents. The whole thing of, I've got a rabbit, I think, out there. Sorry about that. Adolescence was the thing, the perpetual adolescence, because my wife still routinely calls me a child. And there's been times when I've been hyper-focused on something or hyper-focused on a project that my wife has come in and went, "Have you eaten? When was the last time you went to bed? When was the last time that you drank something that wasn't Coke?" That, you know, when was last, you know, so she still has to do that today because I'll get that hyper-focused and forget. In fact, there are times that she has had to come and remind me to go to bed. Which that, you know, when you're 53 years old, that can be kind of embarrassing. Or if you're wearing a Gen X, I guess. Like I said, it's all crazy out there. But the fact that I grew up at a time and a place that your parents said, that just, look, in the 1980s, for me, that was just normal. I just figured that's what had always been. And now, in 2023, looking back at it, it's funny, it's hilarious that they didn't have that in the 70s, and it died with the 80s. That's just, I imagine there's a whole lot. I wonder if there's if anyone's ever done any kind of psych on it, has went and looked at the psychology of the 80s, looked at, I mean, obviously we were lacking because you go back and you look at the way we dress, or a lot of the way people dressed in the 80s. Me and Gary were rocking grunge about 10 years before it was popular because we wore what was comfortable and we wore what we could afford to buy with whatever money we had from whatever side hustle we had going on. So we bought cheap. We bought a lot of stuff from Goodwill because it was cheap, it fit, it was appropriate for the winter time, it's appropriate for the summertime, and a lot of plaid. A lot of paisley, a lot of plaid. Yeah, it was crazy. Like I said, we were rocking the whole grunge look before the grunge look was cool. So I imagine a lot of your early 90s music and a lot of your, probably from about 93, 94 on forward is when you're starting to get your Gen Xers and your entertainment and your, especially music, Nirvana, Blind Melon, Rage Against the Machine, and those kinds of things. Except I think Rage Against the Machine may have been early 21st century, but I'm pretty sure they're Gen Xers. I don't think they're millennials. They might be millennials, but it's that whole thing. And I think that's why the grunge look and all that took off, because these people were sporting that look before. That's how they grew up, and they kept that look into their music career, and it blew. And when they became popular with the millennial kids adopted that look, but it was ours originally. We did it first. But so that's about it. Like I said, thank you to all the people that hit the subscribe button after watching the first 2 videos. I appreciate it. Thank you. I know mine's a small channel, easy to lose, but I kind of like it as a small channel, to be honest with you. I don't, you know, my channel's not monetized, so it is, I don't mind it being small. I do this, as I said in my rabbits videos, to basically get things off my chest, share whatever I'm into at the moment, and go forward from there. So, until next time, peace.